And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We've got a really exciting guest today, Benjamin Minku. He is the founder of Multiverse X, and we are here to cover everything from the current state of layer ones and layer twos, the current state of Multiverse X, and the exciting roadmap that they have ahead, what it takes to build the perfect blockchain, and a little bit more around how do we get to more widespread adoption in 2025. Benjamin, how are you doing today, my friend? Are you well?
Yes, I'm great. It's really great to be here, Anthony, and love to touch base on Multiverse X and everything that's happening.
Fantastic. I know you've been busy. I know there's a lot going on, and thank you so much for making time for this. This is a LinkedIn Live, so please, those watching in, give us your GMs. Let us know where you're coming in from around the world. Do let us know what projects you're working on, what's your interest in Multiverse X, and the other things we're talking about today. So do get into the chat. If you have any questions for Benjamin or myself as you go through, please also put those in the comments section, and we're going to try and get through as many of those as we can as we go through the show. We'll either deal with them in session or at the end, but that's the focus of today's show. With that as a starter, Benjamin, if you could get us kicked off, for those people who don't know you, could you give us your brief background and how did you find your way into Web3?
Sure. So, Benjamin Minku, one of the founders and CEO of Multiverse X Labs. I initially stumbled into Bitcoin sometime in 2012, 2013, went deep down the rabbit hole, studied it, discovered that, or thought at that point that the technology was really great. It was going to have a really great impact on the world, but thought it was not the final version of the technology of blockchains we would need to really see widespread adoption. Fast forward that point, and I've been involved with tens of projects, architectures, and so on that were trying to build a much better architecture, a much better solution to the blockchain challenge. And after several of those, investing probably between 30 or 50 of the most interesting architectures, and discovering that no one was essentially solving the problem that I thought was really pressing and important. This is how we essentially started Elrond, which now has become Multiverse X, to really bring a 1000x improvement in throughput, execution speed, and transaction cost. It's live, and so yeah, really great to have this conversation after so many years of starting that.
Fabulous. And very keen to kind of pull on your experience because I think in 2025, we can now see the proliferation of multiple different architectures, multiple different chains. The top 100 is constantly changing and iterating, albeit with a meme coin here and there. But broadly speaking, we are still seeing a variety of different takes on how do we build decentralized networks? How do we build decentralized smart contract blockchains? How do we build decentralized applications? As you were going through that research and as you were going through your thinking, what makes the perfect blockchain for you, or what maybe were some of the design principles that you took on board from as you were looking at it?
Yeah, so we've looked at it through several different lenses, but at the end of the day, we thought, just as with the early internet days, what enabled the internet to really facilitate this platform for great applications that people use all over the world was this transition from dial-up to broadband. With dial-up internet, you had a lot of interesting ideas being put forth, but you did not have the bandwidth necessary to really make unit economics work over the internet at scale. Once you had that transition from dial-up to broadband, a lot of things changed. Some of the most important players, platforms, products emerge on the internet and really started to have a huge impact, not only for user lives, but then also to really build viable large-scale businesses that we still use today. So we thought that at the end of the day, you can look at a few things like security, like decentralization, and those are important critical features, but you need this type of transition that cannot be processing 7 transactions per second, or even 100, or 1000 for that matter, unless you can process tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands with the real demand that you have, it almost hits the limit immediately as you start scaling or building something. So this was the key idea that we said, whatever is being built will hit the limit extremely fast. And so we need to come up with one solution that can really scale to the demand of the internet. This is how we came up with Elrond. And the only viable solution was this idea of sharding, which in fact is the idea that you see in nature, in computation, and in any type of application that has really scaled on the internet. So what sharding actually means is essentially parallelization, divide and conquer, scale. And then if you look at any type of architecture or platform that does not have sharding, it will hit the limits extremely fast. With sharding, it just means you can parallelize into small shards that can essentially enable you to process large scale transaction throughput in a network. And then this state sharding feature is considered probably the holy grail of scalability, just because it enables you to scale horizontally. I hope that people on LinkedIn can make sense a bit of this idea, but linking it to nature, society, and computation just makes it very clear that we've not invented this. Whenever nature has use of a principle, or you see it everywhere in society and computation generally, you should just take that and try to implement it as best as it can. And this is what we've done with Elrond and Multiverse X.
Really interesting start. And as I was listening back to some of your episodes of Full Shard, which we'll get back to in a minute, I'm really interested to hear your experience of creating and managing a podcast. But you spend a little bit more time talking about the examples where in nature we see that parallelization. And it's really interesting to observe. I think if you take it back to the example of Web 2 as well, if the rest of the world is designing for broadband internet speed of activity or internet broadband capacity of applications, if we're trying to provide a comparable infrastructure with blockchains, if we're back in dial-up territory, but everybody else is trying to operate on broadband, we're never going to meet application builders where they are. We're always going to be constrained or limited to 1996 equivalent applications, instead of being able to provide something that's actually tangibly usable for applications people want to build or want to use today. So I think the inspiration is clear. I think the requirements are clear. Let's double click a little bit on Multiverse X. So as it stands today, as you're talking to prospective builders or people who are interested in the network, what are the things that stand out, or what are the things that you are most proud of that you've built with Multiverse X?
Yeah, so at this point, if we look at things, there's one element that people first look at and want to build their applications on, and this is state-of-the-art performance that is unparalleled to anything that exists in the space. But then people look one step further and say, okay, this is the performance part. It's clear that it's one of the best in the space. How fast can I deploy? And then how secure are the applications that are deployed on this chain? And so we've built everything around Rust tooling, which is designed very differently from Ethereum. We've solved and taken a lot of pain and time to solve some of the, let's say, mental flaws of some of these other languages that just enable people to design applications that do not rob their users of the money, do not enable exploits that users maybe are exploited through without even knowing, right? Because users just come in, they want to use something, and then they discover that they've been robbed of the money for whatever reason. So the tooling part is crucial. The VM part, again, there's a performance element to what the VM can process, but then the tooling, the spacecraft as in space, and then craft as in for builders, a set of tools that they can use to build the stuff is really exciting and cool. Now, taking it one step further to the limit, there's something new that is happening on the chain as we speak, which is we've had an AI hackathon where we've brought some of the most advanced tooling in terms of agents and so on that you can deploy on chain. But what has happened is during the last 1 or 2 weeks, we've also had some internal team members pioneer vibe coding directly on Multiverse X. You've probably seen that. They've installed, of course, some of these extensions with Cursor and so on. And I think the AI on top of a high performance chain will be the thing that one abstracts complexity extremely fast, enables builders from all over the world to build much faster, like time to market compressed into days or weeks rather than months or years. And then the amount of creativity that we'll see coming up with this is absolutely astonishing. So it's exciting to see in almost every field, but then very, very excited in the ecosystem to see builders coming up with the applications and so on. I think they're even having the demo day today, perhaps even now as we speak. So very, very excited about that. Now, this is in terms of technology and sort of ecosystem. I think Multiverse X also has a few of the things that we're doing right now to take things to a completely new level. Because in some sense, I do believe that during the next period, although it doesn't seem like this right now as we speak, the world will be even more split into US and everyone else. And as people that have built globally, we've of course always welcomed builders from all over the world. Of course, starting in Europe, but then literally branching and going out in the world and meeting people. Now we're primarily focusing all the efforts in setting the camp in the US, being present in the conversations, getting the builders on board, getting builders excited and acquainted with some of the tools. And I think this wave is very, very significant and will probably change everything related to adoption, because maybe one adoption bottleneck that did not have to do with technology was just regulation that was suffocating the space, right? At different angles, they had, just imagine this, that they had this operation choke point. Like, who does this? Who names the operation choke point to try to strangle a kind of technology and so on? So stopping a bit right here, but very, very excited about the technology that has been built, the performance, the unparalleled security with not only the smart contract frameworks and so on, but even features like on-chain 2FA that prevent users from being hacked and so on. I encourage any blockchain architecture, any builder to just take a look at that and implement it, because it's a kind of gold standard. And being part of the movement in the US at the intersection of blockchain, crypto, and AI, this is where we see the most fertile ground for some of the applications that really use the performance that we've built.
Fabulous, fabulous follow-up. And there's no question that there's a lot of excitement around the United States as it stands today. I can speak from projects that I've worked with in the last number of years. The amount of effort, time, legal hours, copy and content that didn't go out, activities and partnerships that didn't happen in fear of the SEC or in fear of some sort of punitive regulatory response somewhere down the line is terrifying. And it's probably 20-30% of organizations' capacity wasted that could have been put towards go-to-market, or could have been put towards innovation, or could have been better spent in moving faster. And so in reality, choke point's not a bad example. It's not just about being able to bank projects. It's actually about the projects being able to move at pace in fear of regulators. And all things being equal, we believe that those barriers go away. We'll wait and see. Obviously, we had the Trump pump at the end of last year. I think we have to wait and see for the actual regulation or for the actual changes to come into force to be able to see actual progress. But that's on the roadmap. right? Crypto narratives move at the speed of 2 or 3 days. Regulation and industry change moves at months and years. So we've got some time yet, but there's no question you're in the right space. And working with AI, I mean, the idea of AI and blockchain together is fascinating for me. We've seen projects on hackathons come and have fully AI coded hackathon submissions, which I mean isn't cheating, right? It's not cheating if you're able to put together a working product and a working prototype faster. The interesting thing for me is how quickly can those AIs get access to and learn how to use the primitives in place. And I think one of the things I can observe about Multiverse X is you guys have always been quite clear around the primitives, the building blocks that make up great applications or great decentralized applications. I wonder if you can kind of double click on the developer experience a little bit for us around what some of those tools and primitives are in Multiverse X, because for me, that was always where you guys stood out.
100%. So I very much agree on the, let's say, need to see some of the results in US first, because of course excitement is there. I also think, at least at this point, that there's two plays unfolding at the same time. One is a kind of macro geopolitical play, which is very difficult sometimes to make sense of, repositions the US in this very difficult chess game, or maybe even Go game, where they need to gain more advantage and so on. And then the other is some clear, significant material signals, material steps that they've done toward crypto that are unparalleled compared to what we've seen in the previous administrations or in the previous, let's say, governments that we've seen interacting with the space. So differentiating between the manic depressive mood of the market and this kind of more material sense that I get whenever I see at the people representing this, the discussions representing the space. I'm very excited about the latter. Not very excited, and of course swinging if I were to look at the crazy prices and so on. Coming to the developer experience, we do believe that developers are sort of the architects of these applications that will serve users all over the world. And so developers, to come in an ecosystem, need a few things. One, they need a platform, as I said, where they can trust that the performance and the way that technology has been built is something very reliable, without any downside, without any issues, problems, and then something that they can really build on, knowing that even if something doesn't work out, they'll have someone to reach out, they'll get support, they'll get ideas, they'll get peer review. And this is what, in some sense, we've been doing for years now. And we're very, very happy that at the end of the day, builders have found a space. Whenever they look at the technology, we find that there's a very deep respect. When someone understands and speaks technology, wherever we may be in the world, there is this kind of common ground that you can build on. Now, in addition to that, we've also learned that technology is really great. Performance is really great. On top of that, you definitely need security with a focus on care, because security might be the first and the last mile. In other words, you might get an application with which you can really tap into the attention of the market. But then if you have exploits, if you have hacks, if you have this type of things occurring almost daily with hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars lost, there's a big opportunity cost, there's a big pain point, and you're going to lose a lot of people on the road. So this is why we've put the focus on the security side with the Rust smart contract language, and then the Spacecraft framework on top of Rust that basically formalizes and thinks about this language that should facilitate fast iteration, but with a rigorous language that enables you to build. On top of that, as I was mentioning, on-chain 2FA and other features like this, because there are ESDTs, like the standards for tokens that are composable, atomic, and will also work across other modular chains that we call sovereigns or Lightspeed chains that people can build on, and so on. Those are really cool things. There are a number of features like that, but we believe once you take a look at the performance, you take a look at the tool stack. Beyond that, it's almost you take a look at the ecosystem and community. Do you love them? Do you feel like there's a good vibe there? You can learn something, you can experiment. And this is, of course, as it is in the crypto space, a bit more maybe dependent on the first part that we were mentioning, not the latter. You see the updates, you see the progress, but if the macro markets and then the crypto markets and so on swing back and forth, you want to breed and cultivate this kind of much more hardcore or stoic spirit that does not rely on the mood of the day, is focused on building something of substance for the long term. And sometimes is this type of thing that becomes the litmus test for builders, because it's one thing, let's say, to build as a developer, and another thing to build as a kind of founder maybe, and to take other challenges in addition to the code and so on. So we believe that developer experience is crucial, and we've built the tooling. It's there, people can play with it, open source and so on. But then we've also put a special care into user experience. And the user experience just has to do with this type of features that make it simple, straightforward for users to play, abstract the complexity, and join the space. Now, whether it's applications within the space, whether it's features that we've enabled and opened for applications to connect to, like the on-chain 2FA, those are really crucial points. But by far the most exciting thing that I believe will change the entire game is the wave that we're doing on AI. I think by the end of this year, more than 90% of the code will be written by AI tools. I'm convinced that it's probably going to be more like 95 or 99%, actually. And it is when you think about that, that you want to have performance, robustness of the tooling. And then the AI will almost help you switch from this more analytical frame of mind to this more creative frame of mind. Suppose you don't have the limitations and you can use AI today. So we have the best AI agent framework in the world already available on MultiverseX. People can build agents with it, can have agents that interact with the chain and so on. And we've actually just going to probably see several builders that have built this during this month. But then even more, I think the vibe coding, although it will polarize some of the builders, because people want to be a bit more on the purist side. Like not everyone should be a coder, not everyone should be a developer. I think a net positive will be that almost anyone will be able to immediately do some iterations on an idea, and the cost from idea to deployment will drastically shrink.
100%. I was having an analogous conversation a couple of nights ago with a friend of mine. He's a film director, and he was kind of lamenting, well, maybe at least his industry was lamenting the death of filmmaking in light of AI. And I said to him at the time, AI democratizes access to filmmaking. It doesn't democratize access to filmmakers. And there's a difference between people who know how to make great films, to post-produce, to look at color correction, sound, what is the best possible way to create certain moments that an AI may be able to learn, but there's still something in the craft and creativity of a filmmaker. Anybody today can create a short AI 5-second, 10-second, 60-second film, but great filmmaking still requires filmmakers. And I think as we go through the next generation of kind of AI development, it's super exciting. And honestly, I still feel like we're only just broadly opening the door a crack to what's possible. But the speed at which we go through it is going to be incredibly fast. I wonder from your side, how do you think about AI experience? Right. And previously, when we were designing for developers, we were designing for developers who could program in languages they were familiar with, who could have access to repos or quick start guides that would take some of the core ideas or some of the core primitives of building so they wouldn't have to redo it, right? You work with the likes of Open Zeppelins and so on and so forth to have peer-reviewed repositories. These were all things that we do in the developer experience world. How do you guys think about the principles behind AI X?
I think this is a really great question, precisely because for now, it almost seems things are, the jury is still out. You don't have some very clear patterns that have held for a too long a time. It's almost like you have a new paradigm shift even within the AI space with different applications that you can play around, build some rails, build some interaction. And I think what we've discovered is almost that, for instance, what I've seen is agents require this ingestion of data. So to process and train them, you almost need to build the website, the documentation, everything around that with a different, let's say, layer other than what you have right now. More like a file, an MD file that puts all the documentation, all the data you have on the website and so on every page, because there will be an AI crawler that ingests that and enables you to move forward. Now, what we've discovered is that, for instance, MCP, this new protocol that is basically being used as we speak, enables a kind of framework that has enabled people to just build with AI, like with Cursor and so on, but then has introduced this idea of skills where you can introduce some very specific language, very specific tooling, whether it's blockchain related or some other subject, that just enables a significantly better reasoning for the AI, where it's very narrow, very specific, and it doesn't need to, let's say, draw other conclusions or random inferences. So I almost believe that this is the first good checkpoint that has made almost a small breakthrough possible, where I've seen people have been using this for many other things like building games, building some applications and so on. And we see now applications, mobile applications and some other things. But blockchains have not benefited typically too much of that, precisely because it's almost a different level of precision that you need with safety critical features or safety critical development, like finance and money and security and all of that. But now with this, I think during the next probably 2-4 weeks, as we speak, we'll discover some very interesting both limitations and ways for people to leverage that. This is just very raw, but what I see is, of course, everything changes from dev first, human first, to AI first. And then once you can wield that, there's also a different level from which, level of abstraction from which you think about coding. It's almost that everything you said about creativity not being lost, about movies, music, and so on, not going away. It's just that I feel on the one hand, the average level of quality is raised significantly. So anyone can, even if they fail much better, fail much more interesting, fail much faster, and discover some very useful lessons. And then for the people with the spark, I mean, literally, there's no excuse. Whatever you want to build, whether it's blockchain or something else, there's literally no excuse for you. And this is why we encourage people to actually take a look at the tools and jump in the water and vibe code a bit, maybe take some of these lessons. We put out some materials and videos and so on, because it's usually like this that you actually learn most of the things in your life, not sitting around and thinking too much about them.
I love that. And the concept of vibe coding, I mean, it's still a relatively new term, but exactly that.
Weeks.
Hack something together, fail fast, build something quickly, and then iterate. Obviously, you don't want to put a smart contract out there that's going to have immediate value locked to it, because these are the things you want to try and learn, but we have test nets for that. I'm wondering what something you said triggered it for me is then at the moment AI is consuming and actioning, right? It's taking a repository, it's taking information, it's taking primitives, and it's creating things. I'm wondering for the developer relations team, or even for the community teams out there, how long will it be before AIs start putting in improvement proposals or putting in requests?
It's already happening.
You're seeing it already?
Yes, 100%. It's still somewhat connected to humans for now. But once you think about this model that we had, and once you think about AI as this colleagues of yours with different speciality, whether it's just someone that's developer relations, it's an agent that does developer relations and is there to make your life fun and easy and cool and tell you some stories. Then you think about the engineer, then you think about the researcher, then you think like these are just levels of specialization and degrees of focus that you apply. There's you probably seen this, that I thought OpenAI had a very good way of reasoning around the agents, where a good way to think about them was, okay, you have this version of chatbots, that was level 1. Then you have reasoners, that was level 2. Then you had engineers, level 3. Then you had scientists. Then you have orchestrators. Now imagine that next thing you know, you have a one-person team with a bunch of agents on every role that is doing a $1 billion company, whether it's in the blockchain space or somewhere else. So I think this is unfolding as we speak, and there's tremendous leverage and tremendous almost excitement in seeing how low the barrier to entry becomes. Both for the best, it's much better, but then also for the early guys, early people, whether they're young or just want to jump into it and learn something, there is literally no excuse. You just need to want something really hard, and then you'll go a bit through the you cannot even name it pain right now, because it's so simple and nice. You get all the explanation to really move forward.
Yeah, the barriers to entry are lowering. The technical barriers to participation with decentralized technology have been historically high because, thing one, we don't do a great job of explaining the decentralized web and blockchains to people. We often use technical language. We don't tend to cite examples. We don't tend to show a lot of empathy for our audience. There are some blockchains specifically that have the marketing strategy of, if you don't understand it, it's not for you, which is fine. I mean, that's a vibe in and of itself. But
definitely a vibe.
It's a vibe. It's not a great vibe for everybody. But if you're inside the circle, it's not a bad place to be. But I'm just thinking now, then it's not an arms race, but it's progress, right? And so if we start with the AI that's consuming something and helping developers to move faster, then the AI is autonomously offering and requesting improvement proposals. You then end up with the bottleneck in the protocol team and your team with saying, well, now I'm receiving 1,000 or maybe hundreds of thousands of improvement proposals per day. How do I enable our engineering team to ship at the speed at which people are learning about our protocol and our features? And so then you have to enable the protocol team with the AIs to help enhance the requirements from the other AIs. And this whole, I wouldn't call it pressure necessarily, but you can see the evolution of the developer protocol or customer engineer relationship continuing to enhance and accelerate the more experienced AIs you can put together. Obviously, you still need release management. You still need CI/CD. You still need security, right? If you're just doing things fast because AIs want you to be fast and you're adding exploits, that's no good for anybody.
Yeah. So I do think that here there's almost 2 points. A good metaphor for the previous perhaps era was that computers were meant to be a bicycle for the mind, and you could immediately see how people could become more productive, they could connect better, do a lot of these things. And I think AI is almost this SR-71 for the mind. And for the listener, the SR-71 is the fastest plane, military grade espionage plane that's developed to really escape any notice of any radars and so on. And I think it's almost that type of thing that is happening for the mind, because you can immediately come with better things, think about them faster, reason around them, put focus on them, and like make the entire flywheel spin faster. Everything you've described are just points on this flywheel that right now you can finally maybe fix something that would take you 1 week in 1 hour or 2 hours. So what we've invested in is, one, making sure that people are fluent about this. Like, they play with it day and night, whatever they are doing, integrating it, looking at it from different angles, because it's this how you develop a kind of fluency with this new tooling, that is AI, that is there to augment everything you're doing. There's only one way to start feeling the pressure, to start feeling the reactivity, to start almost going down, is when you're not proactive, when you're not above the line thinking about how you could learn, how you could improve, how you can use this tooling, which is all there for you. The reason the minute or the second you stop and say, no, I know anything, this is stupid, I won't care about it, this cannot, like, all the people are just hyping it up, I don't really care. It's at that point that you start to play a different and wrong game, right? Against yourself. And I think the way to integrate this into what you're building into your life, basically, is to start and look at what's happening, to start and see whether it's building code, researching some problem, finding a solution, or even personal things. I usually found that even before the state of the art AI, I could maybe troubleshoot a medical problem after reading a bunch of books, perhaps better than your normal, let's say, medical stuff. But just because I think it's not what it looks, it's more like troubleshooting and understanding what you need to understand from the field, and then thinking hard about the problem. Well, right now with AI, you can certainly do it extremely sharp, at least to get a sense of where you are, how you could improve things and solve some problems. So yeah, I do think that starting small, and saying, today I'm going to learn a bit how this goes, how it helps. If it's good, if it's bad, it might not be good for everything out of the gate. But then if you start right now, in 1 month, you'll be in a very different place. And then in 2 months, you'll be in a different place. And you'll not be surprised that something else comes out. Because the thing is, the speed, it's the speed that's so mesmerizing with this, right? We're excited. You might be excited about something today, but this arms race that is happening between countries, between the best minds in the world, this is both the most exciting and scary thing happening in the world right now.
It is. And for want of not adding more FUD or fear to the listeners or the viewers of this particular show, I'd say let's keep it down to if you're not thinking about AI in your engineering teams today, your developers are. And if you imagine your developers are going to be developing and giving you feedback at the speed of AI, how are you thinking about being able to engineer and to make improvements at the speed of AI? And I think
Yeah.
it's an interesting go get for a lot of teams, because I know a number of teams are thinking, oh well, blockchain and AI, those aren't good bedfellows. Or the reality is it's not even about blockchain and AI. It's that AI will be pervasive in development, in compute, in resourcing, in every aspect of IT, whether it's decentralized or not. And we've all got
100%.
an obligation to lean in.
100%. I do think that it's both. If businesses, startups, teams are looking, it's both the biggest opportunity and the biggest opportunity cost. Like if you're not doing it, it will cost you either way. So it's
Yep.
up to you to decide how you want to play the game.
Really nicely framed that. I promised those listening in, I promised this was never scheduled to be an AI conversation, but look where we've ended up.
I mean,
We've ended up
definitely
talking
not an
about
AI conversation.
This is exactly that. That's the point. This is not an AI conversation. This is a conversation where we're talking about the current state of the decentralized web, and you cannot ignore the influence of AI.
100%.
And really
100%.
excited to see what the next kind of 2 to 4 weeks from your hackathon and kind of the outcomes from that are going to be, because I haven't seen many others take that on so early. So well done to you guys for doing it. We did say we were going to talk a little bit about the current state of other L1s and L2s. There's lots of different approaches and architectures for scaling, lots of different approaches for smart contract chains, interoperability, engaging with digital assets today. And from a personal perspective, privacy is something that's been, I think, maybe arrived late to the party because we were busy doing everything else. We Web3 as opposed to We Midnight. But it's probably a recent concern in terms of scalability. As you're looking at other networks, and we don't have to mention them by name, but as you're looking at others in Web3, other layer ones, other layer twos, other architectures, other technologies, what are some of the things that you're inspired by today, or that you look at and say, you know what, actually that's genuinely pushing things forward, as opposed to being just another EVM replicant or just another version of a layer 2 linked to an exchange, which honestly speaking, actually, horizontally integrated layer 2s is actually one of the smartest plays you can have, because it gets you wallets, customers, regulation, distribution, and all of the above. But all that aside, what are the things you're excited about?
I do think that there's no other good way to scaling other than sharding. And I've penned this down in a kind of scaling law that I think, like any sufficiently advanced technology or architecture, will by necessity be sharded, whether it, as I said, in nature, society, or computation. That being said, I do think that if you have this solved, there are some special purpose technologies that on top just augment and enable you some use cases that can be even more interesting on top. One of those is, of course, zero knowledge technology, zero knowledge proofs, and rollups. And I love that technology because privacy is sort of a kind of liberty defense, of a kind of element that in the cyberpunk space philosophy was almost seen like the last battle. It was the equivalent of cryptography extended a bit upwards, where you say you do have privacy thanks to cryptography. And then given that you have privacy, you have some free speech that you can do. Without that, you're at the whims of the government. So if the government is good, if they're gracious and so on, that's great. If they go completely rogue, then it's going to be very, very problematic. So it's extremely important for society to develop these tools that give them power to defend, power to do good, for anyone in the world. That's one way of looking at it. Then I do think that, for instance, user experience generally is crucial. And another jump in user experience might enable the next wave of hundreds of millions of users or billions of users. That's going to be crucial. I also think that interoperability is crucial, because at the end of the day, the fragmentation is one thing that's killing the space, that you have all these smaller pawns with really bad different UX that confuse the users, that split the users, and then at the end of the day, you don't know what to make of it. Like what's happening, especially as someone coming in, it might look very, very strange. So I think one, you do want to have a layer one that really scales. Second, you will have user experience that is extraordinarily simple. And I do think that this will have to do with AI, whether it's just agents helping you do the stuff, information, giving you information, agents being your personal brokers, agents being your, let's say, developers or co-founding builders. I do think that it's almost like the interface will be eaten by the AI during the next period, and that's extraordinarily useful because it gives you this lever toward larger adoption. Interoperability, I think that we've not done generally as an industry particularly good. There are some protocols, they're very cool, very exciting. We obviously have conversations with them and are even going to announce some integrations that are very exciting. I don't think this has been played to its limit or to its conclusion yet. It's almost like we've played the small game, and everyone has played the small game, and we've not seen yet one layer that really seamlessly interconnects, enables extremely compelling user experience and great adoption. And that will be a like multi-billion-dollar experiment to unfold. I'm wondering, yeah, it's almost like everything else is a bit about abstraction and AI stuff. So I almost think that in the AI stuff, I could put too many buckets at this point. This tells you a bit about what AI means and doesn't mean in our day. But yeah, I think this is a bit what I'm looking at right now and what I'm excited about. I also sometimes just flip the switch and look, just if I could not build anything today or for the next year, and I'd want massive adoption, what are the levers that do not have to do with maybe building another technology, building another product? That's a very productive experiment, especially if most of the time you're just impelled to build a new thing or build something new. Sometimes it's not the new shiny thing that will get you the solution, but rather looking at how do you communicate better, simpler, funnier, engage with the community for real. That's driving the growth. And then also for business, you have this extraordinary good tool. How do you bring it to market properly? How do you take the adoption step? And I think on this, we've learned some very hard lessons about Europe and maybe about any market beside the US, because there's almost a kind of dark age in terms of building projects, startups, and so on beyond $1 billion outside of the US. The knowledge is simply not there. So you either reinvent the knowledge, discover it yourself, or just wander into the shadows, darkness, until you finally reach the US. It's sad, but in fact, a bit true, more than true at this point.
We've seen it plenty of times, and it's a really interesting insight into the mind of the founder. And honestly speaking, from having worked with a few absolutely fantastic technical founders, there is always that compulsion to build the next thing, because founders are builders, right? They get bored,
100%.
they want to go and do something next, they want to do the next thing. But actually genuinely asking yourself, do I really need to build anything else, or I just need to make what I have more easy to adopt or more easy to consume, and so on. So a very interesting insight on that one. I did say before we ended the show, I wanted to get your take on your experience with podcasting and the Full Shard podcast yourself. It's you and the two Lucians, right? It's your brother and Tadea.
Yes. Yes.
I think about 6 episodes in now. Not that you're short of things to do. How did you end up finding yourself into podcasting?
Well, we reminded ourselves that maybe one of the most important things on top of the technology, on top of the, let's say, cool, extraordinary products that we built, was that we've tried to always cultivate this sense of having a conversation with the community, listening about some things, trying to distill them, simplify them, communicate them, and maybe the moment we lose touch with that, or we forget that, because it's very easy, that's when you lose perhaps a bunch of community or adoption and so on. So we thought hard, precisely from the angle that I was mentioning before. How can we translate some of the language that we usually use? Like we built a lot of things. How can we make it much more humane, much more tangible, much more simpler and approachable to the users? Because we believe that sometimes you can have the best technology in the world and you can still die. You may still die because of some other random reason. So yeah, we thought this was a great way of sharing a different part of the story with a different part of conversation that is much more casual, that gives a bit of a light in the journey. Because some of these things are like building a startup is perhaps one of the most difficult things you can do in your life. Generally, it will suck your energy, test your very limits on everything you think you can do, and so on. And then to the degree that it really takes off, it will puzzle and challenge you, and every step of the way you'll have to relearn stuff. So sharing that part of the story, we thought, sometimes gets neglected, and what better way to just step in and share it than do a podcast and see where it goes.
Love that. The build in public thing, I think, is hugely powerful. And those projects that have built successful followings are the ones that are out in front, that are out talking to the community or sharing their thoughts, whether that's on a Spaces or an AMA or like with you guys on a podcast. I think it's an underrated factor when it comes to building community or building engagement, is that relationship with the founders, or with the again, the founding team in your case. How do you decide what goes in the next episode? Because I mean, some of these feel a little bit more like rambles, getting things off your chest. Some of them feel a bit more pointed around, no, there's something that we need the world to know. How do you figure out what goes in the content?
Indeed, we have a bit of at least a very flexible structure. One idea is we look at something that's top of mind today in the world, and it's technology related. It's maybe at the intersection of blockchain, AI, this type of technologies. That's one lens that we look through. That's very natural. It's also the thing that we would do. Let's say we would discuss about even if we would not do a podcast. So I think that's the angle from which we're approaching things. Then we are trying to have one subject or two subjects where we do a bit of a deeper dive. So here's something extremely cool or high impact that's happening. Then here's something that is related to what we're building and so on, that we'd like to do a deeper dive on. Maybe it's AI, and first it doesn't seem like it's very related, but then 2 weeks down the road you see that it is actually related, that we're playing with it, that we want our users, our community, our teams to just play with it, because it just gives them a better edge, a better value creation framework. And then lastly, of course, we always touch on some cool things that are happening within Multiverse X. And we believe that this is a great way of just sharing things the way we actually think about them. Very unscripted, very in the flow. And then also touching on some deeper points, whether they're challenging points, whether they're very important points about the technology that maybe people, we believe, don't get or do not emphasize enough. But that's a bit of the way we're looking at it. I'm sure it will change. We'll probably have many more invites, discussions, conversations with other people and so on. But this was the way to start it and start to tell the story and then refine it as you discover more insights. I'm curious if you had one or two maybe ideas or lessons, that because you've done maybe 100 episodes, what's one or two things that you've learned that are pure gold on this front?
Wow, I get asked a question on my own show. Thank you for flipping the script from one podcaster to another. I think the one learning from producing content for 5 or 6 years is that the attention span gets shorter. And so if you're waiting till the end of the show to announce the stuff that's important in the ecosystem, you're probably waiting too long.
Okay.
And so we've got to try and capture the imagination quite early. I think the fact that you've got members of the team and you're giving a chance for the Lucians to get some of the airtime as well, I think is super important. Being able to showcase the partners and the community really helps, because nothing advocates for your ecosystem and your technology like the guys who are building with it and love it. And so being able to showcase them, I guess then the final third thing is, and this is something that we do with the Unshielded show for Midnight, and we specifically framed a format around this, is the idea of having a demo, of actually showcasing some technology. That might not work with Full Shard, but maybe it's a spin-off show for more focus on developers. But I think the talking heads concept is fairly well established now. But the developer demo or the walkthrough or the speed run, I think for a technical audience works quite nicely. And I couldn't do it on this show, but maybe you could on yours.
Very, very interesting and very cool. Both the first 2 points, interestingly enough, some other colleagues have started another just technical version that showcases this, which is called Momentum. They I think have the second or third episodes of really cool, just translating some of the cool, crazy technology that we're building. And in fact, this was precisely the idea that maybe some things are not, we built so much, there's so much happening that sometimes people don't ever hear about it, and they also don't look at GitHubs and so on. So unless we tell a story about these things, even for developers, no one will hear about it. So this is why, we're investing some more into it. But some very useful lessons you were sharing.
Excited to see more of it. And thank you so much. We're at time. We've come to the end of the hour. So Benjamin, thank you so much for being part of this show. Thank you for sharing your experience, your wisdom, your views on AI, on what makes the perfect blockchain, on becoming a content creator and also a founder. It's really interesting to follow your journey. Wishing you all the very best in what's to come. Excited to hear what comes out of the hackathon and the vibe coding work that you've been doing. And stay safe out there.
Anthony, it was a really great pleasure. Thanks a lot. And looking forward to having you around in the ecosystem. Thank you.
Absolutely. See you soon.
Bye-bye.